Nickelodeon, you know, the network for kids, is filled with amazing and lovable Nicktoon characters. For many of these characters, they also have families, siblings, mothers, and the subject of today's list, fathers. Some dads can not only be a means of support and love, but also an amazing influence on their kids' lives. Others, not so much. But who among these Nicktoon dads are the most good, and which ones need to go take some parenting lessons? Hey guys, I'm Brad with Wicked Binge, and this is Nickelodeon Dads Good to Evil. And keep in mind, this list may not include every single Nicktoon dad. We're focusing on the most memorable, as well as the ones who had an impact on their kids, whether that be a good thing or a bad thing. We also aren't including grandfather characters, so Phil Shortman, Lou Pickles, or Puma Loco, not gonna make the cut. Well, yeah, they are still fathers. Considering how many Nicktoon characters have grandparents, that can honestly be a whole list on its own. Alright, as usual, we'll be starting with our most noble characters, the ones who easily deserve a shot at a World's Best Dad mug. These are the good dads. The gold medal of fatherhood goes to Lynn Loud Sr. For some fathers, it can be hard to balance taking care of 2 or 3 kids, but try taking care of 11. Just the fact that Lynn is able to give all of his kids time and attention already makes him a super dad. Throughout the show, we see him making time for his kids, whether it's jamming out with Luna, reading bedtime stories to Lola, or going on a game show with Lincoln. He's always encouraging when it comes to all of his kids' hobbies. And he's also the family chef. We often see him making homemade meals for his family, and given that he has 13 mouths to feed, this is obviously no small task. There have also been moments where Len has gone above and beyond his duties. For example, when Len gets tired of hearing his kids argue over money, instead of simply grounding them for fighting, he sets up an elaborate treasure hunt to teach them the value of working together and sharing money, rather than being greedy. He even sacrifices the $500 bonus he earned at work to give his kids a worthwhile treasure.
It was really nice of you to give up your work bonus.
Also, when he suspects that he may accidentally be favoring his kids, Lynn practically runs himself ragged, trying to make sure he treats all of his kids equally. It later turns out that his kids never even thought he was playing favorites, but it just goes to show just how much Lynn loves his kids and wants to make them happy. Occasionally, he may make a mistake or be a little too enthusiastic, but these small errors still don't do much to take away from the fact that he's honestly the best dad that 11 kids could ask for. Earning the silver medal is Miracle City's greatest hero, White Pantera, aka Rodolfo Rivera. Obviously, being a superhero, Rodolfo has a great sense of morality and honor. But even stronger than that is his love for his family, especially his son Manny. When we see him put his family above his reputation as a hero, it's revealed that Rodolfo ran away from a fight with El Malverde, not because he was afraid of being eaten, but because he didn't want his wife and son to be without him.
I had to make sure I was around to raise a heroic son like you.
Rodolfo is constantly trying to inspire Manny to be the best that he can be, instilling in him lessons of honesty, endurance, and hard work. Whenever Manny messes up, Rodolfo is fair in his punishments. He's also affectionate with Manny, showing that even if he doesn't always understand him, he still very much loves him. So why is he only in second place? Well, while he's usually fair, Rodolfo's high level of morality means that he can sometimes be too stern. And while it's good that he's encouraging Manny to be a hero, sometimes this encouragement can come off as him trying to push Manny into the career of a hero, despite Manny not yet knowing what he wants to be. Though not perfect, his good qualities as both a father and a hero easily shine through. Up next is Chief Hakoda of the Water Tribe, Katara and Sokka's father from Avatar. As the chief of the Southern Water Tribe, Hakoda is a strong and noble man. Unfortunately, like many parents who have to serve in their nation's armies, Hakoda had to leave his kids behind, while he went to lead the men of their tribe in the war against the Fire Nation. Understandably, this had a negative effect on his kids, especially Katara. However, Hakoda does what he can to make this right. While he had a duty to his people, he lets Katara know that this still wasn't a decision he made lightly, and he tells his daughter that he missed her and Sokka every single day.
You and your brother are my entire world.
Even if he isn't able to see them often, when he interacts with his kids, Hakoda is loving and supportive. He encourages Sokka to step up as a leader, seeing his potential and helping his son believe in himself.
I'm proud of you, son.
he and the other adults let themselves get captured in order to protect the rest of Team Avatar. Encouraging, protective, and strong, Hakoda is clearly the best dad we meet from the world of Avatar. Raymundo Rocket from Rocket Power takes fourth on our list. Taking care of a kid as well, let's just say, frustrating to be polite, as Otto Rocket is no small feat. But Ray does a good job parenting both him and his daughter Reggie, and even acts as a father figure to their friends Twister and Sam. Though maybe not as sagely as his business partner, Tito, he does a decent job giving his kids advice and teaching them lessons. He's passed along hobbies like surfing and will happily join his son and daughter out on the waves.
That's my boy.
He can be stern at times, but again, when you have a kid like Otto, you kinda have to be. Episodes like Big Thursday and D is for Dad show this the best, where we see that even if he sometimes seems unfair, Ray always has his kids' best interest at heart, and he has their backs when things get dicey, even willing to go out into a storm to save Otto from drowning. All in all, Ray is a pretty rad dad. Next, we have the first two of our 4 Rugrat dads on this list, Chaz Finster and Howard DeVille. Looking at them as fathers, they're similar. While maybe meek and nervous on the surface, both of these guys have no problem stepping up as fathers. With twins to take care of, Howard always makes sure to treat them equally. Then, and all grown up, when Lil starts wanting to be seen as separate from her brother, Howard supports her, even if it means giving up their family vacation to a twin-themed amusement park. As for Chaz, while he may sometimes be overprotective, he's also a great father to Chucky, and then later to his daughter Kimmy. While it was hard for him to talk about, he was willing to be honest with Chucky about his late mother. He dressed up as Santa and went down the chimney in the hopes of helping Chucky get over his fear of Santa. And in the movie, we see how much Chaz trusts in his son and values his opinion, even if Chucky barely knows how to talk, wanting a wife who loves his son just as much as he does. Like pretty much all the adults in Rugrats, however, they can be oblivious about what their kids do, which is concerning given how much trouble these toddlers get into. Still, the two seem like the most responsible of the Rugrat dads, so they still make it pretty high on the good list. Up next, we have the first of our rat dads, Splinter from the Rise of the TMNT, also known as action film star Lou Jitsu. When we first meet this version of Splinter, he seems lazy and uninterested in his sons. Thankfully, we soon learn this isn't the case. When he was still Lou Jitsu, he saved his sons from becoming child soldiers at the hands of Baron Draxum. He took the turtles in as his sons, and because this version of him isn't quite as focused on keeping his ninja clan alive, the turtles were able to explore hobbies and have a real childhood. When Splinter discovers that the Foot Clan has returned and is planning on resurrecting the Shredder, he takes it upon himself to go undercover and take on the Foot himself, so that his sons don't have to.
Not even lunch and I already saved the world.
It's only when his sons reveal that they want to fight that he steps up their training, so that they can become true ninjas. This isn't the only time Splinter is willing to sacrifice for his sons, as we see it again in both the Season 1 and Season 2 finales. But while Splinter loves the turtles, he's not perfect. As mentioned before, he can be lazy or careless, and sometimes a little rough whenever his sons are being disrespectful or not focusing. Then there's a time when he lies to Donnie about going to a demolition derby just to relive his glory days in front of an audience. While Splinter did apologize and made it right in the end, it was still kinda messed up. Also, while he claims that they sometimes need to learn the hard way for it to really set in, you have to wonder if Splinter scaring them just to teach them a lesson about lying was maybe a bit much.
We planned this whole thing to teach you a lesson.
Perhaps not the best sensei, but still a pretty great dad, all things considered. Sir Nigel Thornberry from the Wild Thornberries is about as wacky of a dad as you can get. And despite being voiced by Tim Curry, he actually isn't evil or even that bad of a guy. Go figure. Though one would think being the host of a nature show that travels the world wouldn't leave him much time to be a parent, Nigel does a decent job of being fatherly towards his daughters, Debbie and Eliza, and his son Donnie. Although he loves his job, he was willing to settle down in Oxford to give his daughters more normal lives, showing that he's willing to sacrifice for their sake. He also puts himself at risk several times to protect his family. Unfortunately, as much as he'll do anything for his kids, he can be oblivious and struggle to understand them. He can come off as bumbling and even frustrating, but it's obvious he still has a good heart. Only 2 notches below the other incarnation of this character, we have Splinter from the 2012 TMNT series. Like his Rise of the TMNT counterpart, 2012 Splinter can be a loving and protective father. As a sensei and ninja master, he's able to teach his sons to be the best ninjas they can be, and offers them advice throughout the series.
Anger is self-destructive.
From helping Raph control his anger, to offering Donnie tips on how to deal with his crush not sharing his feelings, to teaching Leo how to be a leader. However, because he acts more as a teacher than a father, this can sometimes make him stern, especially when it comes to his punishments. He spends the most time with Leo, teaching him techniques that he doesn't teach anyone else, and putting pressure on him to be a proper leader, even after Leo is still recovering from being injured by the Shredder. Ignoring the fact that he's playing favorites, that's a lot of pressure to put on a 15-year-old turtle. Additionally, compared to his more relaxed counterpart, we don't see 2012 Splinter spend much time with his kids outside of the dojo. They don't have movie nights or play games together like the Rise family. In fact, we hardly ever see this Splinter joke around with his kids. But hey, some dads are just like that. And even if he comes off as distant, Splinter is still active enough in his sons' lives, protecting them as best he can, and preparing them for a world that may not always accept them, which is admirable in our book. Next on our list, we have Hugh Neutron from Jimmy Neutron. Just by looking at this guy, you can sort of tell that Jimmy's genius didn't come from his father's side of the family. Now, as far as goofy dads go, Hugh is one of the goofiest. He loves ducks, pie, and is known for making up silly songs and tripping over himself. Still, just because he's strange and eccentric doesn't make him incompetent. He's able to teach Jimmy some things. Hugh had the chance to invest in Retroville's local burger joint, which would have made him a millionaire, but instead of using the last of his funds to do this, Hugh decided to use the money for a wedding ring to give to his future wife, Judy.
Man has to have his priorities.
This goes to show that even before he even had one, Hugh was a family man. Hugh can also be accepting, even in the most extreme situations. He loves spending time with Jimmy during events like the parent-child games and Father's Day. And even if he doesn't always understand his strange hobbies or quirks, Jimmy likes spending time with his dad too. Guess bumbling isn't all that bad after all. On the surface, Jack Fenton seems like the type that would put his career above his family. As Amity Park's resident ghost hunter, he and his wife Maddie spend hours in their lab making ghost hunting weaponry and trying to track down real ghosts. But while ghost hunting is important, and he does focus on it a lot, much to the annoyance and embarrassment of Danny and Jazz, Jack doesn't let it overshadow the needs of his kids. He loves them and will often take time to bond with them, like when he bonded with Jazz in Maternal Instincts, and when he took Danny fishing and ended up saving him from being eaten by a sea monster.
Up, too small. Better throw it back.
Speaking of which, he's also protective, becoming more competent when it comes to defending his family from evil ghosts. Although he was often calling the secret identity of his son, Danny Phantom, his biggest enemy, this hatred is almost immediately pushed aside when he learns the truth at the end of the series. Jack even offers to be Danny's sidekick. Being a dad is the most important job he has, even more than being a famous ghost hunter. Rounding out our good list is father and godfather Cosmo Cosma from the Fairly OddParents. As a fairy, Cosmo can be incompetent at best and dangerous at worst due to his carelessness combined with his lack of intelligence.
A bomb-shaped alarm clock! What's this button do?
But when it comes to his son Poof and godson Timmy, well, he's still sort of incompetent, but he's also loving and attentive. This is especially true with Timmy, whose own father is often absent in his life. Through Cosmo, Timmy is able to have a fairly positive father figure, one who loves spending time with him. Unfortunately, Cosmo sometimes encourages and enables Timmy's rash decisions and bad ideas, so he isn't the most positive role model. For both his sons, he acts more like a friend than an actual parent, leaving his wife Wanda to pick up the slack. But he makes the boys laugh, and that's not nothing. That's it for the good characters. Now it's time to descend into neutral territory. The fathers who aren't yet awful, but perhaps a bit more distant. This is the gray area. At the top of this list is father and inventor Stu Pickles from Rugrats. Stu was a fun dad, and we're sure any baby would love a father who could invent any toy they wanted. Unfortunately, Stu's toys don't always work properly and are sometimes dangerous. In fact, there are instances when they're the exact opposite of what a child wants, like with his Mr. Friend toy, which Tom and the others are absolutely terrified of.
Mr. Friend will be just fine.
Then there's his lack of attentiveness. In nearly every episode, and especially in the movies, Stu's focus on his inventions and him not paying attention can lead to the babies he's supposed to be watching getting out of their playpens and toddling off into danger. In the episode Touchdown Tommy, he puts watching football with the other dads above looking after the kids, which leads to a battle over chocolate milk and a huge mess to clean up. Still, when he manages to focus on it, Stu can be a good dad. In the first Rugrats movie, he makes the time to teach Tommy about what it means to be a big brother, and when the babies go missing, he puts his all into finding them. So, while you may not always trust him to babysit, you do get the sense that if not for him being a bit of a scatterbrain, he would be in the good list. Next, we have Harold Squarepants from SpongeBob. Because SpongeBob is an adult, we don't get too many examples in the series of Harold taking care of his son, but from his few appearances, we can gather that he's at least supportive. There's never been a negative on-screen interaction between these two, and when SpongeBob loses his home to nematodes, he and his wife are more than happy to let his son move back in with them. He even helped buy SpongeBob a brand new boatmobile when he finally got his boating license. So while they don't seem as close as other father and son pairs on this list, there's certainly a good foundation there. One fine day with a woof and a purr, a little baby cat dog came into their father's life. Though he doesn't have an official name, this frog is CatDog's adopted dad, first seen in the special CatDog and the Great Parent Mystery. He and his wife, a blue Sasquatch, found CatDog outside the edge of their cave, taking them in without hesitation. Though a bit grumpy and sarcastic, the love he has for his boys was there from the beginning.
I suppose you're too grown up now to give your old man a hug.
From playing with them, to balancing them on his nose and singing them lullabies, this frog was a father through and through. Unfortunately, since we didn't really see him much in the series due to a tornado taking CatDog away from him and his wife, we don't know how well he would have done as a father had he raised CatDog into adulthood. We only know how he did those first few months. So, while not a bad dad by any means, we do have to put him in the gray. Similarly, Miles Shortman from Hey Arnold was another dad who missed out on most of his child's life due to unforeseen circumstances. Both Miles and his wife Stella were explorers. Through their adventures in the jungles of South America, they met the green-eyed people and helped them find the cure for a disease that was killing off their people, the sleeping sickness. After having their son Arnold, they decided to move to Miles' hometown of Hillwood to keep Arnold safe and give him a normal life.
That's my boy. You did it.
But when they were told that the sickness had returned to the green-eyed people, Miles and his wife decided to make the hard choice to help the tribe that helped them and headed back to the jungle, going missing for 9 years, finally being found in the Jungle movie. Now, our take on this decision is complicated. On one hand, Miles obviously didn't know that he and his wife would fall to the sleeping sickness. He thought they were only going to be gone for a couple of weeks at most. On the other hand, we don't know how long Miles and Stella were down there before they fell into a coma, which makes you think, couldn't they have just sent a letter or something, at the very least, to let Arnold and his grandparents know that they made it there safely? Again, there's a lot of unknowns here, so it's hard to know how much of it was the fault of Miles and how much was just bad timing and bad luck. Still, as great of a father figure Grandpa Phil was, Miles' absence in Arnold's life had a strong impact on him. Though his choice was noble, you have to wonder if it was the right choice for his family. Up next is Professor Membrane, Dib and Gaz's father from Invader Zim. Membrane is a man of science, which often clashes with his son's beliefs in aliens and the supernatural. Due to his work, he's very rarely at home. Even on parent-teacher night at school, he sends a robot and uses video chat to attend instead of being there in person. He does the same thing with his children, setting up video greetings whenever he can't make it to breakfast on time. Still, he'll occasionally try to share a meal with his family and does value them. Membrane invented a device that would supply unlimited energy to the entire planet, but refused to activate it without his kids being there to share the moment.
We're gonna be on TV with Dad!
He also steps up in the TV movie, where he protects Dib and fights alongside him. While he still doesn't quite understand Dib's obsession with aliens, he still tells Dib that he's proud of him. It's a really nice moment, but it doesn't completely make up for how absent Membrane is for 90% of his kids' lives. Next is Timmy's dad from The Fairly Odd Parents. Yeah, I know some of you are surprised. There are times where Timmy's dad can be seen as neglectful, leaving Timmy alone with an evil babysitter.
Somebody say evil!
It'd be fine if Timmy's dad had to work the night shift and had to use a babysitter, but often we see him and his wife go out on date nights instead, which occur weekly, if not nightly, leaving Timmy to suffer alone. So why is Timmy's dad here and not in the bad tier? Well, for starters, as we've discussed earlier in the list, incompetence doesn't always mean malicious. Though he gets worse in the later seasons, that could extend to nearly every character in this show. In the early seasons at least, when he does spend time with Timmy, he seems to enjoy bonding with his son. He sometimes leads Timmy's Squirrely Scout group and can be protective of Timmy when he actually notices his son's in danger, even going so far as to fire Vicky when he finally learned how cruel she was. He was also willing to give up his awesome superpowers for the sake of his son. Unfortunately, these nicer moments don't take away from just how absent and absent-minded Timmy's dad can be.
Why should we believe anything you say?
It's no wonder Timmy seems to prefer Cosmo, despite, oh my god, all his flaws. For the last of our great list, we have Ed Bighead from Rocco's Modern Life. Ed and his daughter Rachel have a complicated and pretty tense relationship. Ed disapproves of his daughter, then named Ralph, and her job as an animator. Compared to his own job as an office worker at Conglamo, Ed sees animation as something to be ashamed of and wants Ralph to follow in his own footsteps.
I have no son!
Later in that same episode, we see that Ed still loves Ralph, even saving the donut half that he had planned on giving her and still wanting her to be part of the family. In the TV movie, Ed has a hard time accepting Rachel after she comes out as transgender, being overwhelmed with all the changes in his life. He eventually comes around, thanks to the advice of Rocco, and while it's admirable for him to accept that he was wrong and show love towards his daughter, his father skills still seem somewhat lacking. That wraps up the gray area. Now entering the bad territory, it's time for the dads with the worst parenting skills ever. These are the bad to evil dads. First off, we have Lao Beifong, Toph's dad from Avatar. Lao wants to keep her safe from a dangerous world. However, it's obvious that Lao cares about the version of his daughter that he built up in his head, not the person she actually is.
I want to be sure she's not trying anything too dangerous.
He repeatedly reminds his daughter that she's blind, telling her that she's helpless and fragile. Due to him isolating her for the sake of safety, she also doesn't have any friends before meeting Team Avatar. When he learns how strong and independent Toph is, he only doubles down, enforcing 24/7 supervision and forbidding her to fight. When this naturally leads to Toph running away, he sends bounty hunters after her. Sometimes the hardest thing a father can do for their child is to let them go, allowing them to live their own life. But Lao was like, nah, I'm just gonna keep her here. It should be noted that this issue is eventually resolved in the comics, but since we're only looking at the series, we have to put him in the bad tier. Next is Drew Pickles from Rugrats. Much like his brother Stu, Drew's work often keeps him from spending actual time with his daughter Angelica. When he is spending time with her, he's often spoiling her and doesn't always do a good job stepping in when Angelica is being a bully to her cousin Tommy. That job often falls on her Aunt Dee Dee, given how little Drew actually notices it. Given how he's raised Angelica, it's easy to see that he isn't the best father figure. The only thing that keeps him from falling lower is that he isn't abusive and he occasionally puts his foot down with her.
You're gonna stay in your room and think about what you've done.
Unfortunately, these punishments don't always stick. In Pickles vs. Pickles, it's actually pretty frustrating, given that the dream Drew has shows exactly why he should do his job as a dad, to make sure Angelica doesn't become entitled over something like eating broccoli. But in the end, he just gives in anyway. Drew Pickles is a perfect example of why it's maybe a bad idea to treat your kid like a little prince or princess. In third place is Mr. Eugene Krabs from SpongeBob. Early on in the series, we see how loving Mr. Krabs was towards his daughter, Pearl. But even back then, we could see the cracks. Like when Pearl asks her dad for one specific present, and instead, Mr. Krabs gets her the exact opposite of what she wants, all because he was able to buy them at a bargain.
But I got him for a bargain!
There's nothing wrong with the dad setting limits on what he buys for their child, but considering that Krabs has plenty of money and Pearl only wanted one thing, it's still not a good look. Even on Pearl's birthday, Mr. Krabs is really cheap. He reuses old decorations, gives her dishwater punch and stale popcorn as snacks for her party, and cheaps out on the entertainment. This breaks Pearl's heart, and her 16th birthday is only saved by SpongeBob buying her a bunch of gifts. which Krabs reluctantly allows her to keep. Despite Mr. Krabs' cheapness, he cares about his daughter's well-being. He allows her to completely change his restaurant and didn't want to hurt her feelings when he saw that the changes weren't working out. And while he resorts to stealing, he keeps her fed when Pearl is hungry and in pain due to her growth spurt.
You could fire her. It's okay if she hates you.
Though still caring at times, his greedy and cheap mindset often gets in the way of him being a better father. Earning our silver medal of poor parenthood is Big Bob Pataki from Hey Arnold. Remember earlier in the list when we suggested that the 2012 Splinter maybe played favorites with his sons? Well, Big Bob takes favoritism to a whole new level. Of his two daughters, Helga is often ignored, while Olga is praised, with Bob only paying attention to Helga when she can do something for him, like when he wanted her to win the city spelling bee to keep up the tradition of a Pataki winning.
Win, win, win!
Later on, when it's recommended that Helga get therapy to help with her issues, Bob tells her to not blab about them to her therapist. In the Jungle movie, we see that he's stubborn enough about his beeper business that he forces his family to sell their home and live in the store, just to keep it afloat. Thankfully, as awful as Bob can be, he refuses to let any of his business schemes get in the way of his daughter's safety and will go out of his way to protect her. He was even horrified at himself for nearly hurting her when he thought she was an alien in the Halloween special.
I almost killed my own daughter.
After hearing how miserable Helga is, Bob puts in the effort to get her tickets to the musical Rats. While this was a mistake on his part, given that Helga actually wanted to go to a wrestling show, the gesture was still felt, and he and Helga both had a fun time making fun of the musical together. Bob may be a pompous blowhard, as Helga often puts it, but those rare moments of kindness towards his youngest keeps him from our top spot. Out of all the Nicktoon dads, there's only one dad who's awful enough to get our gold medal of evil, Fire Lord Ozai from Avatar. I mean, come on, who else would it be? Seriously. Although we don't officially meet him until the third season, his influence and impact on Zuko and Azula is felt throughout the series. With Zuko, Ozai was downright abusive, giving him a scar simply for speaking out of turn, and then giving him the impossible task of finding the Avatar. As for Azula, while he offers her more love and praise than he does Zuko, this love is hollow and has its limits. In the series finale, when he became the Phoenix King, it became clear that Ozai cared more about his power than his daughter's feelings, wanting to rule alone instead of having her by his side like she'd thought.
You will remain here in the Fire Nation.
For Ozai, love is conditional and is only worth earning when his children earn it by being perfect heirs and doing everything he tells them. Now, if that wasn't a nightmare, he was willing to kill Zuko to get the role of Fire Lord. When Zuko finally stands up to him, Ozai ends up shooting Zuko with lightning. And yeah, he's trying to kill his son again. Unlike the rest of our bad tier dads, there are no good qualities for Ozai, who sees his children more as pawns than family. He more than deserves the lowest of low rankings in terms of being a father. Alright guys, what do you think? Let us know in the comments section who you think is the best and worst Nicktoon dads. Be sure to hit that notification bell and binge our Good to Evil playlist, where we break down the morality of the characters in your favorite cartoons, shows, and movies. But most importantly, stay wicked.